We started and you did something. Then you made your first dollar. Then you started hiring freelancers. Then you got your first team in place. And now we're getting 5 to 9 employees. It's too many people for you to actually manage on your own. And so we go from stabilize to prioritize. All right, so at stage 4, which is the 5th stage, because we started at 0, headcount's 5 to 9. Your role is now manager. All right, so you went from training people to just do their basic skills to like, okay, I got to manage people right now. All right, your leadership structure is that you have one layer. This is your first team. Not your first couple people, but this is a fully functioning team. And number of companies at this level is roughly 3 million. All right, kind of crazy how we already gone from 30 million to 3 million in terms of the number of businesses that have between 5 and 9 employees. Like the air gets real thin real fast. Now, we're going to start with product at this level. What are the good services and results that you deliver? What are the constraints and what do you need to graduate?
So product, the constraint at this level is that you said yes to anybody who would pay, right? That is what you did in the beginning. And then you got feedback from so many different customers, it created too many different product directions. So you essentially have too many offerings for people right now. And so in order to graduate, you have to specialize your product, aka move into product V2. And then you have to also price it to serve a niche down avatar. So here's what we want to do, and here's what that looks like. We want to do an 80-20 analysis to basically figure out who are our best customers, who are paying us the most, who are worth the most money. What is that 20%? Because in most businesses, what it is that out of all the customers that you have, 80% of them actually take up a ton of headache, a ton of time, a ton of resources, and actually give you the lowest return. And so what you want to find is you want to understand who are your best 20% of your customers, and those are the ones that you want to replicate, right? And so then what you want to do is come up with a product that's perfect for that 20%. The 20% that gives you the most money, the most return, and loves your product more than the other 80%. Okay, so these are your raving fans, your perfect customers, the ones that have the most LTV. And so then what you want to do is you want to change your offer to reflect the value to that narrower customer. So to give you an example of that, we had a business come to one of our workshops, and that business, it was essentially a lead generation agency, right? So they just got leads for B2B services, right? Out of those B2B services, he was like, I really want to serve plastic surgeons. And we said, okay, let's understand your customer base, who pays you the most and who are the ones that complain the least. It actually ended up being law firms. And so law firms actually accounted for the 20% of the customers. The only reason that he had gone into the plastic surgeons, he had said that that's who I wanted or whatever, was because he had more of them. So he thought, oh, because I have more of them, these are the customers I should serve. But then what we found is that he wasn't putting the effort into getting law firms that he was into getting plastic surgeons. But when he did get the law firms, right, they actually had almost double the LTV. They barely took up any time from customer service, and they said better things about the product. So the question is, who are your law firms, right? Who are those customers that you actually probably take the least effort to find, they take the least effort to fulfill, and they like you the most?
And this is typically one of the scariest transitions for most businesses. And this is one of the 5 horsemen that I talk about where businesses get stuck, is that now I've only talked about this in terms of headcount, but just to give a little bit of dollar signs, usually between 1 and 3 million in revenue is where people basically run into this issue, where they say yes to everyone. And the rock and hard place problem is if you say no to money, then you're worried that you're not going to make any, right? And so it's like, but if you keep accepting all these different, disparate types of customers, then you're never going to be able to templatize your solutions, which makes it more difficult to scale. So think about it like this. If you have lots of different customers, lots of different product offerings, it becomes more difficult to sell them, more difficult to attract them because you're all things to all people, which means you're nothing to no one. It becomes more difficult to sell because when you get on the phone, you have to then train a sales rep on all the different types of prospects and all the different types of products. And then once you do magically sell this person on the back end, everything's custom. So it's a massive pain. Whereas if you had one message for one specific avatar, it's easy to train the sales rep on where they're at, where they want to go, and then you can templatize the solution. And so you literally get efficiencies all the way through the process. It's just scary. But when you do have templated all the way through the process, guess what happens? Your margins increase, your effectiveness in your advertising improves, your sales conversion rate improves, all of these things improve. It's just scary because you haven't done it before. Like right now, you have the infrastructure to handle 5 times more of the top 20%, right? By very nature, they're 20% of the business, but maybe they account for a disproportionate part of the revenue. So right now, if you got rid of the 80 and then filled it back up with the 20, your business might triple without having to add infrastructure. This is why it's so valuable to niche down. Once you basically spray and pray in the beginning and accept money from anybody who's got a credit card, then you got to be like, who am I really in business to serve? And that's what we're answering at this phase of the product.
It's really a theme across all things, which is like you generalize before you specialize. And there's a like a joke in software that I think applies to all businesses, which is like all software eventually becomes a CRM, because they always look at what they're doing and they say, oh gosh, we could make so much more money if we served all these people and did all these other things. And this is the point in time where businesses, there's the slippery slope of becoming all things to all people. And so right now, what we want to make sure is we're not all things to all people. And that's what we're narrowing down in with this product. Don't become the CRM of your industry. Recently, I had somebody come up to me and he was like, you know what? I have a marketing agency, but I'm noticing that they're not closing the leads. And so I'm thinking, you know what? I should probably also close the leads. And I was like, you know what? Let's just run their business for them. Let's just actually build 17,000 businesses instead of have our own. And so the point is, you want to go from generalizing to specializing with your price, with your avatar, with your product.
And I'm just double clicking on that price thing because people are going to object to this, which is if you have this new narrower avatar that you provide significantly more value to, then your price needs to match that. Because maybe that 20% get 5 times the value that the other 80 do. And so you basically are pricing to the lowest customer who you can barely get results for, rather than pricing to the customer that you provide the most value to. And as soon as you do that, maybe you don't need to sell 5 times as many of that 20%. Maybe you just need to sell double of that 20% and you still replace all the revenue because of how much more value you can now provide to that avatar. In the offers book, I talk about the kind of levels of niching down. And so I say, okay, if you had a time management product, generically, it might be $19. If you go time management for sales professionals, all of a sudden it might be a $99 product. If you go from time management for sales professionals to time management to B2B outbound sales professionals, then it might go to a $1,000 product. And then if you go from time management for outbound sales professionals to time management for outbound sales professionals for power tools and garden, then you might be able to charge $10,000 for something like this. And so fundamentally, you're actually, but your basic core deliverable is more or less the same. It's still time management. We just get so much narrower on the people that we want to deliver for that it becomes more valuable because of who they are rather than because of what we did. This is some of the magic behind niche pricing. Like the actual perceived value of the thing you sell goes up dramatically by simply being more specific about who you target. And if you're that avatar, think about if it's you. If you had a course that was $19 for time management versus one that sounded exactly like what you did on a regular basis, you're like, oh my God, this is just for me. And you're willing to pay more for it, even though it's probably the same thing.
So, product. We started with saying yes to anybody, right? And then we got feedback from so many different people. We created all sorts of Frankenstein products, right? At different prices, different avatars, different products. We're gonna specialize our product and our price to serve a niche down avatar. And now we move to marketing.
All right, so now we're at marketing for level 4. And so this is how you let people know about your stuff. So the problem at this level is that you have too many unqualified leads. And to graduate, you have to make better free stuff. You have to add more creatives to increase your volume of advertising and add qualification/friction so the extra volume self-selects. And you're like, how is that different from the band? I'll explain. All right, so first things first, make better free stuff. So I've talked about the unscalable thing. I still double down on this at this point because it's like, okay, you did what you thought was good, 4 stages ago. It's time to update. It's time to say, okay, I have more resources now. I can invest more in the free stuff that I can give away. I can actually give away things that have a hard cost to my competitors that they cannot necessarily afford. And so I like to say, okay, if I were to give something away, it costs 4 man hours and it costs me $100 in labor in order to deliver this lead magnet. Well, if my cost to acquire a customer goes down because I get 4 times the leads because I'm actually delivering free value to people, that's hard cost free value, then I still net a gain. And on top of that, the reason that we add qualifications at this level or make sure we're even more stringent on them is that you can give this amazing free thing away. It doesn't mean you need to give it to everyone. And so you say, if you meet these qualifications, then I'll give you this thing for free. Because if I were to tell you right now, oh, the perfect avatar is on the phone, has the budget, has the need, it needs it right now, has authority, would you be willing to give them a little bit of work for free if they're the perfect customer? Absolutely. You're just not willing to give it to tire kickers. So don't. The clear part here is that if you want to make it better, because now we did niche down our avatar, which means that our free stuff needs to be clearer and more specific to that new avatar to match the messaging, right? And so if we said, for example, that we're going up market, we found out that big law firms are better than individual attorneys, for example. we might be saying, okay, how to go from 100, clients at your law firm to 200 clients might be the lead magnet, versus maybe when we started, we said how to get your first 5 law firm clients, or your first 5 fitness clients. You're going to attract a very different avatar with the first lead magnet than the second. And so we just want to make sure it matches all the way through the funnel. And so from a creative perspective, we obviously match the messaging. So that should go from click to close. So that means the ads and the headlines, the lead magnet, the offer, the headlines and the funnels, what you're asking for in terms of qualification. All of this, and the scripting and the nurture, all of this should be aligned with your new person that you're really wanting to attract. That's the better part of the creative. The more part of the creative is that you want to be more specific with the call out, right? So when you're in your headlines, instead of saying, hey, looking for all attorneys, it's looking for attorneys that have at least 5 full-time attorneys that work at the law firm, or looking for attorneys that do at least 100 cases a month, whatever, right? Like, you're gonna have your special thing that you can qualify in the ads and the call out to get the best people in. And so we then, because at this point you need to advertise more. And so you're probably used to doing one piece of content, X number of outreaches, or spending $100 a day. Well, that stuff starts to fatigue. And so it's like, okay, we have this new messaging, and now not only are we gonna make it better, more specific, we're gonna do way more of it. And this is kind of like the level up that has to happen. From a friction perspective, again, if we are niching down, then this should walk all the way through the funnel. And so now the qualifications in our application, we should add those specificities. So like, generally speaking, sure, I want budget, BANT, right? Budget authority, need timing. Sure, we wanna have that. But we also want to know, it's not just, are you an attorney? It's that you have to meet these other qualifications. We referenced earlier for Gym Launch, it's like you have to have an employee, you have to have 30 members, you have to have a signed lease, whatever it is that you actually add more of those things to it to make sure that now you're even getting closer and clearer on who you want. And so those are the things that we do to prioritize in terms of sifting through the traffic at this level. So we went from too many unqualified leads to more better free stuff, more creative to boost volume, lead magnets that match the new narrower avatar, and then we add qualifications and friction to also match that new qualifications for the avatar that we're looking for.
So next we have sales, okay? And sales is how to get people to give you money for your stuff. So the constraint at this level is that your speed to contact drops. So you're generating leads, but you're reaching out to them much more slowly. So you might have reached out to them the same day they were coming in before, now you're reaching out to them 7 days later. The second thing is you have no metrics around sales. So if I were to ask you right now, what's your close percentage, you might not actually know. And so to graduate this level, you want to track basic KPIs manually on a spreadsheet. Yes, we are using Google Sheets. And so what that looks like, okay, basic sales key performance indicators. A KPI is a key performance indicator. It tells us if we have things going in the direction we want them to or not. And so for sales, it would look something like this: contact rate, schedule rate, cancellation rate, show rate, offer rate, close rate, cash collected. And you can then individualize all of this by rep. So if you have multiple people doing sales, you would get numbers for each person on each of those things. And lastly, we have advanced, which is you could track scheduled call to close percentage. You could track opt-in to close percentage. These are freebies. If you're already tracking some of these things, which some people are at this point, because maybe they really love sales, you come from sales, not uncommon. Start tracking scheduled to call percentage and opt-in to close percentage.
Yeah, and lastly, you want to make sure that you're tracking the absolute amount of sales that you're making and percentages every week across everything. So just chunked all the way up.
The next piece is that because your speed to contact goes down, we want to do some things to incorporate some basic lead nurture, right? Okay, the first one is that you want to change the thank you page headline to sell booking. Okay, so you want to sell people on booking a call. That's the first thing that you want to do. So think about it like when somebody lands on the page, it shouldn't just be it's sitting there with no copy, nothing. You want to have a headline that sells people to book the call. That could be using scarcity. That could be using urgency. I like to say just state the facts and tell the truth. Like, oh, we don't have time for that. It's like, all right, well then tell people that. Oh, we only have so many seats for an event. Okay, well then tell them we have so many seats for an event. Like, stretching the truth or lying is not what we are telling you to do. State the facts and tell the truth. You probably at this time only have so much capacity. You probably only have so many products you can sell. You probably have so much ability to fulfill. Use that in the headline. The second thing is moving the scheduler above the fold. So a lot of the times what people do is when you look at the page on the site is you have the scheduler down below, right? And so a lot of people are like, I don't know why people aren't scheduling a call. And you're like, yeah, because you just scroll all the way freaking down to the end of the page to schedule a fucking call. It's like you want to get people to schedule as many times as possible. And so putting it above the fold and then also having multiple areas where you incentivize people to schedule. The next is that you want to change to 15-minute time slots, open to 7 days a week from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. Okay, so why is this? When we started our company, Allen, it was a software that worked leads. And what we learned was something very interesting. The number one correlation with companies that made more sales was availability. Availability. And so there's a couple ways that you can increase availability, right? And you can beat all your competitors just by doing this. One, you have availability to sell 7 days a week. Two, you have the most amount of time slots possible. So from PST to EST, 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. And then second is that you have 15-minute increments, because 3 o'clock might not work for somebody, but 3:15 will. If you do those three things, you can increase your throughput dramatically. Most people just aren't willing to do it, or they're not willing to ask people. Here's the thing. I'm not saying that one person that's doing sales should accommodate all three, but you should stack people. You should create a schedule so that you can get coverage on all of this based on the team that you have in sales. Next that you can do is you can incentivize your setters with 3% of sales. So people who are setting appointments, right, to make sure that you are actually getting leads scheduled quickly, you can say that they get 3% of the sale for every call that they have set that turns into a close. After that, you can implement automated reminders. So personalized reminders are always supersede automated, but what's even better is if you have both. And so make sure that you have automated reminders on top of personal people reaching out.
And I'll throw this in there, is that when you have automated reminders, be clear that they're automated. So don't try and make automated seem like they're not automated. Just be like, this is an automated reminder. And then that way, when you do have your personal one, they know that a real person's behind it.
And so that brings us to manual reminders, 24 hours out in the morning and 1 hour prior. So what we have also seen through our software, Allen, is that, and this is the crazy part, is that when we had the software, it integrated AI. And so it did customize its responses that were automated. However, when we had a rep actually sending the messages, the likelihood that person showed was still twice as high. So there's something to a person doing it that creates a higher show up rate. So because you've incentivized the setters with 3%, they can also do those manual reminders. And the last two things, really. One, daily kudos to the team for show up rates. So a lot of people praise sales, but they don't praise or give kudos to the leading indicators that create a sale. Leading indicators would be show up rate. They would be reaching out to clients. They would be sending those reminders. They would be nurturing the leads. They would also be following the script. All the things that lead to a closed sale, we want to incentivize those. So for example, having a Slack channel where people are constantly reinforcing and shouting each other out for nurturing the leads, that is something that you want to do to incentivize that behavior, because people will do more for status than they even will for money.
And I'll just toss something in here. With the kudos that we're doing for sales, one is you just shout out during the huddles. It's like, hey, so-and-so had a great thing. And then you ask them, hey, what have you been doing? And they'll be like, oh, I'm just following the process. And it's like, right, isn't that crazy? It means other people aren't doing it. But where this is incredibly important for business owners is that for me to say, okay, you're gonna go from a 35% close rate to, let's say, a 42% close rate. That'd be a 20% boost. In your mind, you might be like, I don't know if that's realistic given where we're at right now. But if you have a 50% show rate for your calls, you can absolutely go from 50 to 80 if you implement every single thing that you need to do to work leads. And that would be a lot more than a 20% lift. And here's the crazy part is that lift in the show rate results in the same increase in total revenue as an increase of 20% in close rate. All the way down the funnel, it works the same way. Except so few people look at show rate and so many people obsess on close rate. And so right now you probably have even more opportunity for improvement, because this is also way more process-based and honestly way less skill-based. Like, it doesn't take a lot of skill to just follow the process. It takes more skill to close someone on the phone. And so at the very basic level, it's like all closers should be working their leads to get a phenomenal show rate to just maximize the likelihood that they can make more sales.
And then the last thing that you can do to increase show rate is implement a bribe for showing up. So I see this as bribing somebody is either adding a positive with showing up or removing a negative for showing up. So it could be removing a negative would be like giving them a discount, giving them something for free, whatever. A positive would be like giving them money, giving them a gift card, right? There's a lot of ones that I'm sure you've gotten the emails that are like, I will give you a $100 gift card if you show up to the call. There's another one that I thought was fantastic, which was when I signed up for a HR software. The incentive to show was that if I showed, they would give me a $500 credit towards my first month. I actually showed to it. I remember that very specifically. I was like, I want to save that $500. So a lot of people also would be incentivized by saving money. It just depends on who your avatar is.
And if you're brick and mortar, we tested this on Allen, so we have tons of data on it. having a like, hey, a choice. Like, would you like a pink shirt or a blue shirt? Or what size shirt would you like? Let me put one aside for you for when you're coming. It's like you're incurring this minor cost and you've added some level of personalization. So it's like, hey, Sandy, I got your medium pink. It's waiting for you. I'll see you at 4 o'clock. If they don't show, they'll still reschedule. It's just a very different vibe. And like, what do you care? $6 for a t-shirt? But if you can get a 10% lift in show rate, which translates to a 10% lift in revenue, massive. And this is such an underutilized opportunity.
So that being said, for sales, right? Speed to contact was crappy and you had no metrics. To graduate, you want to track basic KPIs on a spreadsheet, that is fine, and also increase speed to contact.
So this is exactly what we do at our portfolio, prioritize. I talk about it a lot as an entrepreneur that you have unlimited options with limited resources. So the growth of the business is decided by the quality of your prioritization, AKA strategy. In fact, one of the portfolio companies we acquired was a medical service brick and mortar business. They had 14 locations when we acquired the business. I looked at all the metrics and there was a lot that we could do. Customer service, improve show-up rates, train the team, but we decided to do one thing, which was triple pricing, and increased LTV by 4x. We did so by specializing the product and tailoring our messaging to the right avatar. We even built an ambassador program for that exact avatar. Our next priority was dialing in the sales script to improve the upsell process. That 10x'd the recurring revenue of the business. If you solve the biggest constraint of the business at any given point, you get maximum return for your effort. And if you'd like my team's help getting dialed on what your priorities are, and sometimes even seeing a move that's more important than everything on your to-do list, then you have two options. One is, if you don't already have a scaling roadmap, just click the button below this video and you can go get your own. If you already have one, and this is the video that you're watching for your current level, then go ahead and click, should be somewhere above this video, to apply to see if you qualify for one of our workshops. Because this is how we can take this entire roadmap and make it real for you, for your business and your industry right now.
Which brings us to customer service.
All right, so customer service is how you get customers to refer, retain, review, and resell. And so the problem at this level, at 4 for prioritize, is you have no metrics for customer success. And so to graduate, we install tracking and KPIs and centralize notes, key point, centralized notes for each customer by getting a basic CRM. Now the thing is that the CRM that you had in the beginning is probably more sales driven. And at this point, this is where it starts to make sense to like, okay, do we need to add in some features to our CRM? Do we need to expand it? Or do we need to get another kind of system for CS or delivery so that we can make sure that every customer is being kept track of? All right. And so this is what it looks like. Yet again, Google Sheets reign supreme, but KPI installation. So what we look at, like these are probably the 3 things that we'll look at most frequently in terms of metrics, which is and this is outside of activation stuff. This is just easy metrics to track, which is what's your NPS, which is Net Promoter Score. If you don't know how to do it, Google it. And then CSAT, which is customer satisfaction. Churn percentage is what percentage of customers are leaving from last month to this month. And then refund and chargeback percentages. So these are just like key ones that you should always know these ones. Centralized notes from all the touch points in the basic CRM. So one of the key things that makes a magical experience, remember we're talking about experiences versus results. So this is an experience thing. What's a friction point? Repeating yourself or feeling like if you have to repeat something that you said on to a different rep or a different person in the company and they're servicing you and somebody else who's in charge of your account doesn't know that, then you're like, well, for sure they're not implementing it, right? And so you want it to appear like magic. It's almost like you want the company to have one brain as though all communication is downloaded into this one point. And I can't even explain to you how much more legitimate you look by just adding this little thing. So if it's like, hey, I saw that you talked to Layla. These are the things that you talked about last week. I want to build on that. And so let's dive into it. They're like, oh, wow. Like it takes 5 minutes of research before a call to just look, review the notes from before, review the goals because you should have those from the onboarding, right? Notice how this stuff stacks on top of each other and be like, okay, so when I'm getting on with Sandy, this was her goal. These were the action steps she was supposed to take. She's had 2 calls with Nicole, and these are the outcomes of those calls. So when I get on, I look so much more professional and sharp and buttoned up that they're like, man, this company's really legit. And that experience is exceptional. And it buys you more wiggle room to mess up. And then to the same degree, this is like centralizing the notes in terms of the good stuff. You also want to centralize the notes in terms of complaints and opportunities for improvement. So always having some place where like those improvements or those friction points can get documented, because at this point you might not be the one delivering. And so you want to keep your finger on the pulse so you can still keep touch with what the customers are complaining about now, because these are still the problems that we have to solve now, even though you're a little bit removed.
So like Alex was talking about, when it comes to CS KPIs, you really have three levels. You've got shallow, medium, and deep data, which equate to different measurements, right? And so right now, deep would be like you have customer focus groups, you've got customer interviews. Medium would be like you have surveys where people can type in longer answers. And then shallow is where we want to focus right now because we're just trying to get a pulse, and that is NPS, CES, and CSAT. Right? And so there's some instructions here of how to use NPS. It's probably one of the most popular ones that you can use for customer service in general. The reason I suggest using it is because it has so many benchmarks for industries that it's going to give you, if you Google like most common NPS for lawn care business, most common NPS for chef business, most common NPS for customer service business or for personal training business, like you can find benchmarks. You can screenshot this and then reference this when you start implementing NPS scoring. Okay, so NPS, just to explain, is calculated based on responses to a single question. The question is, on a scale of 0 to 10, how likely are you to recommend our product or service to a friend or colleague? And then there are different levels based on what they have responded with what that means for your business. And there is the calculation below.
I personally like NPS a lot because I think it's the most sensitive tool. Like it's very easy with a, just a generic CSAT or five-star score to feel like you're doing better than you really are. And so to put this in context, you only get a plus point if they answer 9 or 10. 7 or 8 are still zeros, they're neutral. And then anything 6 and below is actually a detractor. And so when you get a 6, you might be like, oh, I did okay. It's like, it's actually, that person is actively telling people not to come to your business. It's significantly harder than you think to impress people. But once I'm just telling me personally, like, once I got really into NPS, it's like I just got really obsessed with it. Like I love seeing NPS scores go up because it's just such a sensitive metric. Like it can swing a lot. And to give context here, it's not a 0 to 100 score. It's a negative 100 to a positive 100 score. So I think the average company is like a negative 12. That's how quote bad it is. And to give context of like some world-class businesses, like Apple is a 61, Chick-fil-A is a 58. And so these are really good companies, and it just shows you how much room for improvement everyone has for the perfect experience.
And if you're wondering what our NPS score is, on average for our workshops, it's 91. The next one you can use is CSAT, which is Customer Satisfaction Score. This is a really easy one. It's basically a 5-point scale to measure how satisfied a customer is with a company's product or service. And so the important part about this is that you want to implement this right after they get value from a certain point of your service or product. And so the way this is useful, for example, you look below, is how satisfied were you with the support that you just received? Or if you're trying to understand how good the support is. How satisfied are you with our onboarding process? You do it right after they onboard, right? How satisfied are you with our help materials? Right after they use the help materials. And so it looks like something like this: very dissatisfied, satisfied, neutral, satisfied, very satisfied. And I really like this because if you're trying to improve a specific area of your product or service, then this is a great tool to implement so that immediately after they use it, you ask them for the feedback and you're getting it in real time.
So next we have revenue churn, which is how much revenue is lost due to churn, excluding new customer revenue. And so, for example, let's say the revenue at the start was $10,000 and then lost revenue from churn was $500. And so our revenue churn here would be 500 over 10,000 times 100, which is 5%. And so the idea here is that we want to understand both logo churn. Logo churn is the companies that are leaving. But when you have revenue churn as a parallel metric, this allows you to have expansion revenue. So if you have a business where you have different price points, different customers, or different service levels where people can upsell or ascend into, then sometimes you can have something called net negative churn, which means that even if you lost, call it the bottom 5% of your customers, the top percent of your customers spend more than 5% more this year than they did last year. And when that occurs, you have a business that literally just continues to compound and grow, which is nirvana. That's where every business wants to get to. And so the first thing you can do is actually start tracking what this is to begin with. That was a heavier customer service level for you guys. But as we get deeper into the levels of scale, there's going to be a little bit more detail along the way. And that's because the company's bigger and you just need to do more stuff. All right, so that being said, we started with no metrics and we install tracking and KPIs, centralized notes for each customer, and get a back-end CRM in place.
All right, so IT is how you gather, store, analyze, and display information. And so the constraint at this level is really that the new team that you have is not using everything, okay? And so in order to graduate that level, you want to get everyone on all the platforms, protect passwords, get project management tools in place, and communication tools. So I will break that down, okay? First thing you want to do is stop using your phones and text messages and switch to a work chat tool. Okay, Slack is the best option that I have experienced. You could also use Click by Zoho. There's a few other options, but Slack is like the GOAT of the industry, and I think it's a great option to use. The second thing that you want to do is stop saving passwords on your computer and switch to a centralized password protection tool. So I have used LastPass for probably a decade now. I'm not endorsed by LastPass, but they have saved my butt a few times because I can deactivate people and their access based on if you let somebody go, you can just deactivate that user and all the passwords they have, right? And it also saves all my passwords, so it's not computer specific, it's not device specific. It's specific to me logging into LastPass. And so if I go on a trip, if I use a different phone, if I do, I can immediately access everything if I have a login to that tool. And the next thing you want to do is you want to stop using individual to-do lists, right? And you want to switch to using a project management tool so that multiple people can work on and see the same thing with progress. Some other examples of tools, Monday.com, Asana, ClickUp. The key to this is that if everyone does not use it, it will not work well. Because if everyone's not using the tool, then if you're on a project and you've got 7 people on that project, but then only 4 of them actively use and respond to that project management tool on a daily basis, you might as well not have it. And so the key here is responsiveness. Something that, like, if you look at my computer screen on a daily basis, I have Slack, I have Asana, and then I have usually ChatGPT. And so at any point in time, I'm always using those 3 tools to get through my work. So if you notice the theme here, the theme is that we need to go from siloing technology to sharing technology. In order to do that, we need to have more security in place. We need to get on more platforms, and we need to formalize how we track things and how we log things. And so we went from essentially a new team that isn't using everything to a team that is on all the same platforms with protected passwords using a project management tool. And that brings us to recruiting.
Recruiting is how you hire and find people to work for your business. And so the constraint at this level is that you're wasting time with bad candidates and you mishire bad people because of a bad interview process. So remember last level we fixed the job description and the resume review process. Well, now we're living with some of the fruits of still not being as good as we'd like to be. All right, so to graduate, we learn how to screen and conduct a 2-step interview process. So the next part is a 2-step 4-way fit interview. And I'm gonna let Layla take this because she does more recruiting than I do.
So the first step is that you're going to do a screen. A screen is a very quick call that you're going to do with somebody. And the goal of that call is to make sure they're an expectations fit. So you don't want to waste your time with a candidate who doesn't have a pay match. Like they're looking for pay beyond what you can pay. They will not relocate. They don't want to come in from 9 to 5. Basic expectations of the job, things that people must adhere to do the job, you want to make sure that you're screening for on a screen. Now, the second thing you want to do is there's not that many people on your team. And so one person will do one interview that does these 3 things, okay? They're going to check for culture. And when you check for culture, it means, is that person a values fit, right? Do they fit the values of the company? So basically, if you've outlined core values you have for the company, then you would be screening for those on that call. You would then move into skill fit. Do they have the skill to do the job? Usually you can chunk a job into the top 3 to 5 skills that are needed in order to do it well. And so you're going to check for that next. And lastly, you're going to check for potential fit. Potential is, do they have the potential to move up in the company or move into the role that you have next for them? Or do they not, because you don't want them to move from this role and you actually want them to stay where they are indefinitely, which might be something like collections or a staff accountant or something that you're not really looking to have a lot of upward momentum. Screen for expectations, interview for culture, skill, and potential. And then lastly, you want to select so the person who interviews determines if you're going to offer the job, and check references.
And so basically this is step 1 of the 2 steps. And then this is basically all step 2. This is a short screen, like talking 5, 10, 15-minute screen call. And then this is a true interview. Checking references. It's like if you were gonna hire a babysitter, it's like you like want to call like 5 different families they've been to and like you grill them. And your business is also like a child and arguably less stable than the child that you have in terms of its resilience. And we barely take the time to check 1 reference for a lot of people. And so I think doing a little bit of digging is worth its weight in gold. Like you don't want to take the 1 hour that it takes to do these reference checks, maybe 2 hours, but you're about to commit to a massive monthly bill for this person. And if you were to, let's say, buy a software that was gonna cost you $7,000 a month, you probably do a ton of research on it to make sure, like, let's Google consumer affairs, let's look at the reviews, let's talk to other customers, let's do all this stuff. But then all of a sudden you're like, oh yeah, we're gonna hire a $7,000 a month employee, like no worries. I'm sure he's a good guy. I'm a good judge of character. You're probably not, Because the thing is that people have more experience lying than you have detecting liars. And so from here, we went from wasting time with bad candidates to learning how to conduct a proper interview and, importantly, check references.
So now we move to HR. HR is how you minimize the risk of employees and regulators suing you. So at this level, the constraint is that employees actually don't know how to behave. Okay, so they don't know what PTO is or how to give PTO. They don't understand sick days and how to handle them. They don't know what to wear, and they don't know code of conduct, how to act, right? And so in order to graduate, you want to have an employee handbook and policies. Okay, so what we've outlined in the next few slides are the basic policies that you want to have in your handbook so that you can be compliant and understand how to set behavior for people, right? And so the goal is that when someone comes into your company, you have a handbook that you can go over with them, they can read, and then they sign and agree to these things. Okay, so this is basic HR 101, like get a handbook. The first thing that's going to be in the handbook is you're going to have a welcome statement, right? That's really an introduction to the company, the history, the mission statement, the values, right? The next piece you're going to go into are employment policies, right? And so this is going to be, is it at-will employment? What is their job classified as? And what are we doing with their employee records, right? It's really basic stuff. And again, you can get templates for this online. You can also pay something like LegalZoom to give you one of these. Third is you've got code of conduct, which is outlining what governs professional behavior, conflict of interest policy, so if they cannot work other places for different reasons, what is confidential, so what information may not be shared outside the company, and then basically ethics, which is like how do we act in the company, drugs, alcohol, fraternizing, all of those things fall under code of conduct.
Fraternizing means having sex with each other.
It can also mean socializing.
Yeah, and so no one's getting in trouble for that though. But the reason this is important though, just as a side note, and we're going to go through the rest of these, is that you're not a tiny little company anymore, right? Like you're again, this is to graduate. So we're going into 10 plus employees, 10 to 20 is kind of the next level here. And so we're at 5 to 9, but to get to there, we have to put this stuff in place. Like they're like, man, I miss when it was just like t-shirt and jeans days. It's like, yeah, but like now we have customers coming to the office, or now like we need to all be wearing the same colors. Like we need to look like a business.
And so it starts with setting expectations, which means having an employee handbook. You know, we want to outline work schedules. So what are working hours? What's attendance mean? What does it mean to be punctual? What are remote work policies versus in office? We want to talk about compensation. So information on when they get paid, how they get paid, how to make sure they get paid, salary grades, overtime pay, what qualifies for different bonuses, as well as salary increases. Then we want to go into benefits, whether you offer those or not. We want to give information about benefits in our policy. Leave policy, so again, PTO, sick days, vacation, all of those things. If someone dies, if somebody's pregnant, what do we do in all those situations? We want to tell them ahead of time what's going to happen.
See, sex strikes again.
And then the last few, we've got employee performance. How are we going to grade people's performance in the company? What are our safety and health policies when people get sick? If we have an in-person facility, how do we make sure that people stay safe in the workplace? Anti-discrimination policies, so information that prevents the workplace harassment from occurring based on like discrimination, which could be religion, gender, sexual orientation, or origin, age, disability, all those things. And then we go into some of the last stuff, which is technology use, which is understanding how to use the internet. Don't go to Pornhub. What social media you can and cannot use, what your privacy policies are.
And what happens with that computer that you're going to get that's company issued? Mm-hmm. What happens when you get fired or that you leave? Do you turn it in? How does it work?
Mm-hmm. What about resignation and termination? Are there guidelines? Is there a process? Must they give notice? Is no notice required? Do we do exit interviews? And lastly, acknowledgement of receipt. I actually read all of this shit. And so what you guys are going to notice here is this is the details. And right now, the thing is that when people come in, they're coming from a place that was completely different. And so you have to think of it like, it's not like they were playing chess and now they're playing chess again. It's like their last job was like they're playing chess and now they come over to your business and they're playing checkers. And you need to explain to them the rules of the game. Or Fortnite. Yeah. You need to tell them what the rules of engagement are. And that starts with the handbook. It sounds lame as shit. I get it. But it's the same as a job description. Like some people are going to read this like it is the Bible. Some people aren't going to read it at all. The point is that you need to use it and make sure it's accurate so that you can point to it when things occur. Because all the things that we just talked about, I promise you, you're going to have to reference at some point in time. I, unfortunately, have had to reference every single thing on every single one of these slides, probably in the last 6 months. So you will have to do that too, eventually. So that is HR, okay? So we had employees that didn't know how to behave, and then we want to install an employee handbook and procedures. And that brings us to finance.
All right, so it's how you report and manage your monies. So at this level, the constraint is that cash flow is lumpy due to random one-time expenses, and you find out that businesses cost money to run. And so to graduate, you get a profit and loss statement, otherwise known as a P&L, and a cash flow statement set up. And you want to get basic business insurance. All right, and so general liability insurance, now you're like, oh, this is like yawn stuff. You think about it this way, it's like, what are the things that can kill my business? And I want to prevent all of those things from happening. And if I prevent my business from dying, by very definition, it will continue to go, right? And so these are against death. That's all we're doing is protecting from downside here. So you want to protect against claims of bodily injury, so someone slips on the premise, a customer does or an employee does. And that's just customer slips and falls in the store. Like I had a gym, people had equipment, like I had to have this kind of liability. In terms of P&L, okay, so this is just, if you're like, what is a P&L? People have heard it before. It just shows if your business made money or lost money over a certain period of time. And so example is you just add up how much you earned from selling lemonade and subtract how much you spent on lemons and cups. All right, simplest way of thinking about it. And then the cash flow statement tells you how much cash came in versus how much went out over a month. So for example, in that same lemonade and cup scenario, if I made more than I sold during the lemonade period, but then at the end of the month, before the last day, I then pre-ordered 2 more months of lemonades and cups, I might be cash flow negative for the month, even though I made a profit on my P&L. And so it's good to understand both because the P&L will show you how the business is doing, but the cash flow shows you how you can survive and live until tomorrow and pay payroll. And so it's good to have both statements to understand both sides. At this level, that's all we got to set up, the cash flow statement, P&L, and get our general liability insurance. So we go from random lumpy one-time expenses to getting the P&L. And if you know, the reason the lumpy expenses exist there is that in the beginning, especially at the stage, you start making a couple of bigger purchases. Like you just have these bigger investments that are one time, but they happen regularly. And so you have to start expecting these lumpy things that occur. And so you start planning for them. And so the bottom line of this whole stage is that the problem, the constraint, is you're trying to be everything to everyone. If you recall at the beginning, a lot of this was around niching down, making sure that we're getting the right message to the right people. And so to graduate, we niche down to only serve people like your best customers. So it's like we don't have to guess. Just look at the best ones and say, these are the only ones I want to serve. And then everything downstream from that was adjusting to that big change. And so at this point, we've graduated from level 4, where we have 5 to 9 employees at the prioritized theme, and we're moving into 10 to 20 employees. Where now we're productizing. That is the theme of this stage. And if you're just new to this or you're just randomly hopped on here, I want to make a little offer for you, which is if this stuff's interesting, we will make you a custom scaling roadmap where it'll show you what stage you're currently at and then what you need to do at this stage. And then we break down more specifically in some wording around here, what's going to happen next and what you had to make sure got done so that you can smoothly transition from stage to stage. And I think the reason that we've had exceptionally fast growth in the companies that we founded is that we have a lot of been there, done that. Like we know what happens next. We know what's going to break next. And so the growth is way smoother rather than hitting these plateaus and these walls where you get stuck sometimes for 6 months or sometimes 6 years. And so I'd like to help you avoid that. This is absolutely free. It's a custom plan for you. You can click the button below and go grab it. Otherwise, let's go to the next level.